Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha with Juggernaut Fitness TV here. And today I want to clarify a point I made in a video yesterday. It seemed to have thrown some people off. It created confusion. People don't understand why I said that as a general rule, you should not mix resistance training and cardio in the same training session. Now, I hate to use general rules because as we know, different people have different needs. They train for completely different reasons. I might take 20 different subscribers or listeners and all 20 of them train for a completely different reason with no overlap with each other. So that being said, for some people it is okay to mix the two. If, for example, you are primarily an endurance athlete, you compete in endurance-based sports or conditioning-based sports as your primary motivation for training, or you are a very casual lifter, it's something you do very recreationally, you have no intention of gaining maximum muscle mass, you're not concerned with gaining maximum amounts of strength, it is probably perfectly acceptable. However, if your primary goals are muscle hypertrophy or maximum strength or power, it is an absolute mistake to mix the two, and here's why. What you find as a result of training, a lot of people aren't aware of this, they think there's just a couple of different types of muscle fibers, but the reality is there are dozens of different types of muscle fibers. There's 3 or 4 basic types that people know about, and there are a couple dozen transition fibers in between. They're intermediate type fibers, and these intermediate fibers have the ability to change their structural nature based upon training stimulus. This means changing things like mitochondrial density, changing what sort of fuel substrates they store, changing the way that they respond to nervous system adaptation. And what you find is that the more chronic your training stimulus is, the more these adaptations happen inside the muscle tissue and these individual fibers. And what happens is that as you train for strength and power, those intermediate fibers will shift more towards faster twitch type fibers, and they will lose some of their endurance capacity. And what happens is that if you do cardio immediately after resistance training without giving it several hours break and a rest, you undo some of that training stimulus. So you don't actually get the full training stimulus from your workout that you would have as far as the structural changes that it initiates inside the muscle fibers. So what I generally recommend is at the very least several hours between, lots of carbs, and preferably, if you can squeeze it in there, a nap. And that would be the ideal scenario for someone who wants to do cardio and lifting in the same day. Now, I'm not talking about pre-contest bodybuilders, and particularly not pre-contest bodybuilders on shitloads of drugs, because that completely changes the nature of this. But for everyone else, that is generally how you should do it if you want to get the maximum training response from your strength training or hypertrophy work. So you need to break those up. But again, going back to the other point, if you're only concerned with getting 70 or 80% results or even 90% results from your training because you take it very casually and you want to do your cardio after, that's perfectly acceptable. Just realize that there are some potential negatives to that in terms of shortchanging the training stimulus that you just did the work for. And of course, if you're an endurance athlete, you're training for strength to increase work capacity. So again, it's not a major issue for that type of athlete. In fact, I might very well recommend it for that person if they also have no interest in strength sports of any type, and setting a PR on their squat every 6 months is not something that they're particularly concerned with. Again, it's not a big issue for them. So it really comes down to what your individual needs are and what you're training for specifically. But as a general rule, a large percentage of my subscribers have goals that are either bodybuilding and physique oriented or strength oriented towards powerlifting, strongman, things like that. And for those people, it really shouldn't be done. All right, guys, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it has been informative, and I will talk to you next time. But let me give you guys a bicep shot before I go.